Welcome to the Cozy Noah Vibes. I'm your host, Liam. Thank you for choosing to join us. Before we begin, find a comfortable position and set aside all tasks. Let's enter a state of calm together. First, let's take a deep breath. Inhale slowly, then exhale gently. Repeat a few times to deepen and regulate your breath. Now, use your senses to feel every part of your body, from head to toe. Notice any tension or discomfort. Simply acknowledge their presence. Don't try to change them. As you continue to breathe deeply, let's gradually release the tension in your body, starting from the head and moving downward, gently releasing each muscle. Feel the comforting lightness, like an invisible comforting hand, gently embracing you. Shift your focus to your thoughts. Don't try to eliminate them. Just let them drift by quietly, like clouds drifting in the sky. You are merely an observer, unaffected by these thoughts. Let's take another deep breath, absorbing the peaceful and serene energy. In this moment, you are safe and tranquil. Anything can wait until tomorrow. Thank you for participating in tonight's scientific relaxation moment. May you have a peaceful night. Now, as you drift off to sleep, let's listen to a story. Ancient Egyptians believed that after death, they would go to the afterlife. They thought the body was a vessel for the soul, which would leave the body every night and return in the morning. They also believed that after death, the soul would be resurrected, and the body had to be preserved to provide a dwelling for the soul. Hence, they invented embalming techniques and mummification. They believed that after death, Osiris would weigh the heart to judge the person's righteousness, determining whether the soul would be resurrected or destroyed. It was during the 4th dynasty of Egypt when they invented embalming, as they believed that preserving the body was essential to preserve the deceased's soul, Ka, and consciousness, Ba. Ancient Egyptian beliefs were polytheistic, with many gods represented by animals. The Ennead system of 9 gods. Re, the sun god. The Egyptian Ennead pantheon. Shu, god of air. Tefnut, goddess of rain. Geb, Seb, god of the earth. Nut, goddess of the sky. Osiris, god of the afterlife and fertility. Isis, Ozid, wife of Osiris, mother of Horus, and goddess of life. Set, Seth, god of chaos, war, deserts, and foreigners. Nephthys, guardian of the dead, mother of Anubis. Ra, sometimes spelled Re or Ra, also known as Adam. Ra was the sun god of ancient Egypt in Heliopolis. From the 5th dynasty onwards, he was combined with the Theban god Ammonius, becoming one of the most important gods in the Egyptian pantheon. Ra remained the highest god in Egypt for centuries until the religious reform of Akhenaten, where worship outside of the Aten, the sun disk, was prohibited. Later, his worship merged with that of Harishaf. Ra was a self-created god, emerging from the primeval waters or from a lotus flower. He created Shu and Tefnut from his bodily fluids, Hu and Sia from his blood, and humans from his tears. Ra's symbol is often depicted as a golden disc or a circle with a dot in the middle. He was worshipped as Adam and Aten in Heliopolis, representing the morning and evening sun, respectively. Ra undertook a nightly journey through the underworld aboard a boat guarded by Seth and Mehen to protect against monsters like Apep. During this journey, he appeared as Alpha-Ra or Fura. Once, Ra had a dispute with Hathor, and she left Egypt in anger. Ra missed Hathor and, after her transformation into a cat, attacked anyone who approached her, divine or mortal. Eventually, with the persuasion of Thoth, Hathor returned to Egypt. Ra's identity as Ammonius Ra was recognized by the Greeks and Romans, alongside Thoth and Jupiter. The Greeks even gave Thebes the name Diospolis, city of Zeus. Ra was sometimes depicted as a phoenix. Shu. Shu is the god of air in Egyptian mythology and one of the Ennead gods. He was created by Adam, Ra, from his bodily fluids or mucus. He married his sister Tefnut and fathered Geb and Nut. He is often depicted as a male figure with ostrich feathers on his head. Tefnut. Tefnut is the goddess of rain and fertility in Egyptian mythology, one of the Ennead gods. She was created by Ra from his bodily fluids or mucus. She married her brother Shu and bore Geb and Nut. Once, Tefnut had a dispute with Shu and left Egypt in anger. Shu missed Tefnut, but she transformed into a cat and attacked any man or deity who approached her. Finally, Thoth, in disguise, convinced her to return to Egypt. This story is similar to that of Ra and Hathor. Geb, also known as Seb or Keb. Geb is the god of the earth and fertility in ancient Egypt, the son of Shu and Tefnut, and one of the Ennead gods. This belief in ancient Egypt differs from other mythologies, where the earth god is often depicted as a goddess. Geb is depicted as a figure with the head of a goose and the body of a human, usually green or black in color. Geb detains the souls of evil people, preventing them from entering heaven. Geb married Nut, and they bore Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Nut. Nut is the goddess of the sky in Egyptian mythology. Unlike other mythologies where sky gods often appear in male form, Nut is depicted as a goddess. Nut is the daughter of Shu and Tefnut, one of the Ennead gods. The sun god Ra enters her mouth at sunset and is reborn from her birth canal the next morning. She also swallows and regenerates the stars. Nut is also the goddess of death, and her image is depicted on most sarcophagi. Pharaohs enter her body after death and are reborn shortly after. In artistic depictions, Nut is supported by Shu, with stars covering her body. Her husband Geb, the earth, is opposite her. Nut married Geb and bore Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Osiris. Osiris is the god of the underworld in Egyptian mythology, one of the Ennead gods, and one of the most important gods in ancient Egypt. He is a god of repeated resurrection and is buried in the city of Abydos, where he is the guardian. Osiris is the son of Geb, earth, and Nut, sky. In Egypt, Osiris is the god of the underworld, fertility, and agriculture. He fathered Horus with his wife Isis. According to the Book of the Dead, his eldest son is called Beb. Later, he was united with Sokher and Ta as Ta-Sokher Osiris, also identified as Harishaf. Isis. Isis is the goddess of motherhood and fertility in ancient Egypt, one of the Ennead gods. She is a goddess of repeated resurrection. Initially, Isis was a goddess of kingship. Her name in hieroglyphics includes the word throne. Later, during the Greek rule, she became the patron goddess of sailors. Isis is the daughter of Geb, earth, and Nut, sky, and she married her brother Osiris, giving birth to Horus. After Osiris was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, Isis reassembled Osiris's body and resurrected him, linking Isis's image with the underworld and funeral worship. She gave birth to Horus in the marshes of Chemnus. Isis and her sister Nephthys are both protectors of the dead, often appearing as human figures with wings at the ends of coffins, protecting the deceased. Both sisters possess magical powers. Set. Set, also known as Seth, is initially a god of strength, war, storms, deserts, and foreign lands in Egyptian mythology. He protects caravans in the desert but also initiates sandstorms to attack them. He is the son of Geb and Nut, the husband of Nephthys, and one of the Ennead gods. According to one myth, he was born of the sky goddess Nut's third birth, the first two being Osiris and Horus. Set is depicted as a mysterious creature, possibly with a tail or long ears, often in the form of a hippopotamus or a donkey. Set murdered his brother Osiris out of jealousy and fought his nephew Horus for control of Egypt. Although he is often portrayed as a villain, he is not purely evil and is sometimes seen as an ambiguous deity. He also protects Ra from Apep's attacks in the underworld. Nephthys. Nephthys is the guardian of the dead and the goddess of mourning and lamentation in Egyptian mythology, one of the Ennead gods. She is the daughter of Geb and Nut, the sister of Osiris, Isis, and Set, and the wife of Set. Nephthys helped Isis resurrect Osiris after his murder by Set. Nephthys is often depicted as a human figure with wings at the ends of coffins, protecting the deceased alongside her sister Isis. Both sisters possess magical powers. Anubis, Inpu. Anubis, also known as Inpu, is the god of mummification and the afterlife in ancient Egyptian religion, protector of graves, and guide of the dead. He is depicted as a canine, a jackal-headed god, or a human with a jackal head. Anubis assists in the mummification process by guiding souls to the afterlife, weighing their hearts to determine their fate, and leading them to the Hall of Ma'at. He is the son of Osiris and Nephthys, or Set and Nephthys, depending on the myth. Horus. Horus is the god of the sky and kingship in ancient Egyptian religion, one of the most important gods in Egyptian mythology. He is usually depicted as a falcon or as a falcon-headed man. Horus is the son of Osiris and Isis, conceived after Osiris's death. He avenged his father's murder by defeating his uncle Set in battle and became the first pharaoh of Egypt. Horus was worshipped as the protector of the ruler of Egypt and the embodiment of divine kingship. These are the major gods and goddesses of Egyptian mythology, each playing a significant role in the ancient Egyptian religion and culture. Horus, also known as Haruar, or Harmerdi, is one of the earliest versions of Horus, the god depicted in the form of a falcon. His eyes represent the sun and the moon. When the new moon appears, he becomes blind and is called Mikantiurti, meaning one who has no eyes, and when his sight is restored, he is called Kentiurti, meaning one who has eyes. Blind Horus is very dangerous. Sometimes, he mistakenly perceives friends as enemies and launches attacks. In his childhood, Horus is known as Harpocurd, meaning Horus the child, called Harpocrates in Greek, the son of Osiris and Isis, or Banabjedid and Hatmahet. He is depicted as a naked boy with his finger in his mouth, sitting with his mother on a lotus flower. This form of Horus is a fertility god, often carrying a cornucopia. During the Roman Empire period, the image of Harpocard was widely circulated, sometimes depicted riding a goose or a ram. Notably, his father Banabjedid is a ram god. Later, Horus was firmly identified as the son of Osiris's corpse and Isis, or emerging from the sycamore tree of Seosis. This is often referred to as the Horus in many scholarly works. As Harnegitef, called Herondotes in Greek, Horus is the guardian of Osiris in the underworld Duat. As Beheti, Horus is associated with Bede, modern Edfu, where his image is closely linked to the falcon. As Chentiurti, Horus is a falcon god who governs law and order. Later, Horus began to merge with the image of the sun god Are, especially in Heliopolis, becoming known as Are Heracti, also called Are Haruakati. Harakati meaning Horus of the two horizons, Haramake meaning Horus on the horizon, Horakheti, Harmachis, in Greek. He is worshipped as the sun god. Anhur is the name of Horus when he is combined with the god Shu. In 3000 BC, Seth replaced Horus as the guardian deity of the pharaohs. However, when the legend of Seth murdering his brother spread, Horus was reinstated. A battle lasting 80 years took place between Horus and Seth. Horus tore out Seth's testicles and one leg, while Seth gouged out Horus's left eye. Thus Horus became known as the one-eyed god. With the support of Neith, Horus won the battle and became the ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt. There are also legends that Horus and Seth jointly ruled Upper and Lower Egypt. Horus has 4 sons who, in Egyptian funeral beliefs, each guard the organs of the deceased stored in 4 canopic jars: Duamutef, stomach; Kebshanuf, intestines; Hapi, lungs; and Imsidi, liver. Anubis is the god of death in ancient Egyptian mythology and is sometimes regarded as the god of the underworld. He is the son of Seth and Nephthys. His name in hieroglyphics is pronounced closer to Anpu. Anubis has the head of a jackal, or another canine, which is his symbol. This jackal image is closely related to his role in mythology. Because jackals are scavengers and associated with death, they have a close connection to Anubis. He is also seen as the guardian of the dead. In artworks, Anubis is depicted as a male figure with the head of a jackal, erect ears, and holding a whip. Anubis was initially the king of the underworld, but with the rise of worship of Osiris, he became the gatekeeper. As the gatekeeper, Anubis's main duty is to weigh the hearts of the deceased against the feather of Mot on a scale. If the soul is as light as the feather, Anubis takes them to see Osiris, otherwise, they are fed to Ammit. Worship of Anubis may even predate that of Osiris. In the Unas texts, line 70, he is associated with the Eye of Horus. In the Book of the Dead, he anoints the body of Osiris with oil, wraps him in linen woven by Isis and Nephthys, and protects Osiris's body with his own hands. Thoth, also known as Jehudi or Tehudi, is the god of wisdom in ancient Egyptian mythology, responsible for guarding literature and recording. It is said that he invented ancient Egyptian writing. In the beginning of creation, the ancient Egyptians worshipped the animals of their country: crocodiles, bulls, cats, baboons, snakes, scarabs, and so on. Later, they anthropomorphized their gods, but still retained the heads of animals, connecting them to human bodies. For example, the main god of Egypt, Amun-Ra, the sun god, is sometimes represented with a ram's head as a symbol. The nurturing goddess Hathor has a cow's head. The fierce war goddess Sekhmet has a lioness's head, and the god of science Thoth has an ibis head. According to ancient Egyptians, at the beginning of time, the sun god Amun-Ra was born from a lotus in the primordial waters. His children, Shu and Tefnut, gave birth to the sky god Nut and the earth god Geb, who in turn gave birth to Osiris and Isis, and then Osiris and Isis became husband and wife. Nut and Geb also gave birth to Set and Nephthys, who also became spouses. Because of the Egyptian belief in the divine, in immortality, and in the importance of funerary rites, Egypt has left behind many temples and tombs as artifacts. Since ancient times, Egyptians believed that many things had divinity, not only giving them divine names but also worshipping them. For example, the worship of animal-shaped gods, sacred beasts, is a characteristic. Some gods are depicted as unchanged animal forms. Some gods have an animal head placed on a human body. Some have a head adorned with the symbol of the god, and some have a fully human appearance but hold the symbol of the god in their hands. From the 1st dynasty to the 4th dynasty, Horus was highly worshipped in Egypt. People believed that the pharaohs were descendants of the god Horus and represented Horus on earth. Horus is the god of light, appearing in the form of a falcon, and the sacred animal of Horus is also the falcon. Usually, a falcon is depicted above the names of pharaohs. After the 5th and 6th dynasties, the gods worshipped in Egypt gradually shifted to the sun god Ra. By the time of the New Kingdom, worship had shifted to the god Ammonius, Ammon, who became the national god of Egypt. Each deity in Egypt has its sphere of influence, and different places may have similar requirements for deities. For example, in Upper Egypt, Horus is the primary deity, while in Lower Egypt, Seth is the primary deity. The Osiris myth is one of the most important myths in ancient Egyptian mythology. The story tells of the struggle between the two brothers, Osiris and Seth, for the throne. Seth murdered Osiris and scattered his body parts across Egypt. With the help of his sister-wife Isis and his son Horus, Osiris was resurrected, and Horus avenged his father's death by defeating Seth. This myth symbolizes the eternal struggle between good and evil, life and death, and order and chaos in Egyptian cosmology. Symbolic thinking of the Egyptians. Hegel believed that living things are superior to inorganic external objects because living organisms possess something internal indicated by their external shape. Because this internal aspect is hidden or mysterious, animal worship should be understood as contemplation of the concealed internal aspect, which, as life, is a force higher than mere external things. He also believed that Egypt used animal imagery symbolically. In this case, animal imagery is not used solely for its own sake but to express a universal meaning. The animal images of ancient Egyptian gods clearly do not represent themselves but are meant to imply a universal significance related to them. For example, the lion's head represents kingship and power, while the baboon represents wisdom, etc. In this sense, most of Egypt's hieroglyphs are also symbolic. The symbolic thinking of the Egyptians is particularly evident in the images of the gods. Statues commonly found in temples and everyday life often depict gods with animal heads and human bodies or human heads with animal bodies. For example, crocodile, various fish, frog, and various bird bodies or heads appear on stelae along the Nile, especially the ibis favored by the god Thoth. Fierce animals of the desert such as lions, scarabs, scorpions, and the cobra are revered by the Egyptians, while eagles and vultures specifically protect the pharaoh and the queen. Bulls, gazelles, and the long-horned water buffalo symbolizing the mother goddess Hathor represent the Egyptians' blessings for family and offspring. Egyptians believed that various parts of plants such as trunks, branches, leaves, and flowers/fruits also contain the source of life. Spirits blessing water and fresh air reside in tree branches, while papyrus flowers and lotus flowers represent the fertility of the Nile Valley. The image of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt often appears on the sides of thrones, with lotus and papyrus representing Upper and Lower Egypt respectively, symbolizing Egypt's unity. At the end of the lotus and papyrus stems are the Nubians and Asiatics, implying that Egypt's unity is complemented by the conquest and enslavement of foreign tribes. The pomegranate, symbolizing abundance, is abundant in ancient Egypt. In temples, Egyptians specifically reserved space for animals and plants representing divine beings. The concept of harmonious coexistence with nature. An important concept in ancient Egyptian religion is the idea of harmonious coexistence of humans, gods, and nature. After the 5th and 6th dynasties, the gods worshipped in Egypt gradually shifted to the sun god Ra. By the time of the New Kingdom, worship had shifted to the god Ammonius, Ammon, who became the national god of Egypt. Each deity in Egypt has its sphere of influence, and different places may have similar requirements for deities. For example, in Upper Egypt, Horus is the primary deity, while in Lower Egypt, Seth is the primary deity. The Osiris myth is one of the most important myths in ancient Egyptian mythology. The story tells of the struggle between the two brothers, Osiris and Seth, for the throne. Seth murdered Osiris and scattered his body parts across Egypt. With the help of his sister-wife Isis and his son Horus, Osiris was resurrected, and Horus avenged his father's death by defeating Seth. This myth symbolizes the eternal struggle between good and evil, life and death, and order and chaos in Egyptian cosmology. Symbolic thinking of the Egyptians. Hegel believed that living things are superior to inorganic external objects because living organisms possess something internal indicated by their external shape. Because this internal aspect is hidden or mysterious, animal worship should be understood as contemplation of the concealed internal aspect, which, as life, is a force higher than mere external things. He also believed that Egypt used animal imagery symbolically. In this case, animal imagery is not used solely for its own sake but to express a universal meaning. The animal images of ancient Egyptian gods clearly do not represent themselves but are meant to imply a universal significance related to them. For example, the lion's head represents kingship and power, while the baboon represents wisdom, etc. In this sense, most of Egypt's hieroglyphs are also symbolic. The symbolic thinking of the Egyptians is particularly evident in the images of the gods. Statues commonly found in temples and everyday life often depict gods with animal heads and human bodies or human heads with animal bodies. For example, crocodile, various fish, frog, and various bird bodies or heads appear on stelae along the Nile, especially the ibis favored by the god Thoth. Fierce animals of the desert such as lions, scarabs, scorpions, and the cobra are revered by the Egyptians, while eagles and vultures specifically protect the pharaoh and the queen. Bulls, gazelles, and the long-horned water buffalo symbolizing the mother goddess Hathor represent the Egyptians' blessings for family and offspring. Egyptians believed that various parts of plants such as trunks, branches, leaves, and flowers/fruits also contain the source of life. Spirits blessing water and fresh air reside in tree branches, while papyrus flowers and lotus flowers represent the fertility of the Nile Valley. The image of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt often appears on the sides of thrones, with lotus and papyrus representing Upper and Lower Egypt respectively, symbolizing Egypt's unity. At the end of the lotus and papyrus stems are the Nubians and Asiatics, implying that Egypt's unity is complemented by the conquest and enslavement of foreign tribes. The pomegranate, symbolizing abundance, is abundant in ancient Egypt. In temples, Egyptians specifically reserved space for animals and plants representing divine beings. The concept of harmonious coexistence with nature. An important concept in ancient Egyptian religion is the idea of harmonious coexistence of humans, gods, and nature. For human enlightenment. In summary, we can see that the main reason for the worship of animals and plants in ancient Egypt is the oasis sentiment of the Egyptians and their admiration for the tenacious vitality of animals and plants in the desert environment of the Nile. The oasis sentiment of the Egyptians and the mystery and attraction of the vigorous vitality of animals and plants made the Egyptians establish a harmonious relationship between humans and nature, humans and animals and plants. This became an important characteristic of Egyptian civilization. The main gods in Egyptian creation myths and religion are closely related to animals and plants. The prevalence of phallic worship in Egypt is undoubtedly an extension of animal and plant worship. This worship added a mysterious color to the relationship between the Egyptians and nature, and formed national customs such as respecting natural laws and harmoniously dealing with the relationship between humans and nature. Ancient Egyptian animal and plant worship permeated Egyptian philosophical thought, folk aesthetics, architectural culture, and even literary and artistic fields. Through religion, animal and plant worship injected fresh blood into Egyptian civilization. The richness and diversity of Egyptian civilization are inseparable from the injection of this civilization gene of animal and plant worship. Finally, through the study of ancient Egyptian animal and plant worship and its influence, perhaps it will enlighten us today to harmoniously handle the relationship between humans and nature, respect natural laws, and rationally utilize and develop natural resources. Mythical stories. Osiris was originally the god of water, land, and reproduction, bringing blessings to humanity. He ruled over the waters of the Nile, the land, and the growth of plants, providing the people of the Nile with abundant food. Later, Osiris was persecuted to death by his brother Seth and was taken by the gods to become the king of the underworld, so he was more often seen as the god of the underworld. In ancient Egypt, people also worshipped Osiris very much, and his status was almost equal to that of the sun god. On the one hand, when the Nile water receded each year in Egypt, a commemorative ceremony was held to mourn the death of Osiris. Symbolically killing the god, they then celebrated his resurrection, hoping for a bountiful harvest in the coming year and to ward off disasters. It is said that this is because the people of the Nile regard this god, who symbolizes abundance, lush vegetation, and prosperity, as the cause of the changes in the seasons. If the god is harmed or dies, the river will dry up, the land will become barren, and the plants will wither, but when the god is resurrected, the Nile will be abundant in water, the land fertile, and all living things will flourish. This ritual reflects the ancient Egyptians' naive understanding of the mysterious nature of society and their urgent desire to conquer nature. On the other hand, Osiris was also very important as the god of the underworld, which is related to the religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians believed that everything had a soul, and they were particularly concerned about the issue of human survival. Unlike other peoples, the Egyptians believed that there was life after death, and life after death was as important as life before death. Only by completing the continuity of life before and after death could one obtain ultimate peace, and only then could one's life be considered complete. Therefore, Egypt has many myths and legends about the underworld. Since the underworld rules over all the dead, or the people of the underworld, Osiris, as the king of the underworld, has a sacred status. Whether it is the pharaoh, nobles, or ordinary people, the Egyptians all hoped to receive the grace of the king of the underworld after death, which is why Egypt produced the magnificent pyramids, refined mummies, and the Book of the Dead for the deceased to read, etc. However, whether as the god of abundance or the god of the underworld, Osiris is always accompanied by his wife Isis. Isis is also a goddess of abundance and a famous witch in Egypt. She and Osiris are important agricultural gods. After Osiris became the king of the underworld, she also followed her husband into the underworld, becoming the queen of the underworld. The story of this couple is one of the most vivid and interesting myths after the story of Ra. Osiris is even regarded as the successor to Ra. It is said that when Osiris was born, there was a voice from heaven saying that he would become the ruler of all things. When Ra grew old, he indeed passed the rule of the earth to Osiris and ascended to heaven himself. Osiris ascended to the throne of Egypt and became its ruler. At the time of his accession, Egypt was still very backward, and humanity was still in a barbaric state, mainly hunting for a living, and tribes often waged wars, killing each other. Osiris began to govern the country and is said to have enacted laws, quelled tribal conflicts, and improved the living conditions of the people, thus making Egypt a peaceful and unified country. As the queen of Osiris, Isis noticed the needs of humanity and therefore brought wild wheat to her husband. Osiris then taught humanity to cultivate the land, sow crops, and plant fruit trees, making barren land fertile. With these things to do, the people of Egypt no longer engaged in warfare, and they began to live happy lives. When Egypt was prosperous, Osiris wanted to tour the world. During his absence, he handed over the throne to his wife Isis. However, shortly after Osiris left, his brother Seth came to the palace. Seth was a notorious evil god, and he was dissatisfied with his brother's outstanding achievements. He incited rebellion within the country and fomented hostility, but Isis, the goddess, was higher in status than Seth, and she quickly thwarted his conspiracy. So Seth, with 72 followers, began to plot against Osiris, all of whom were assistants to the Queen of Ethiopia, a queen skilled in intrigue. Previously, he had killed Osiris several times, but each time Isis, the miraculous goddess, resurrected him. This time he came up with a plan. He invited his brother to his residence when Osiris returned from abroad. He wanted to hold a grand welcome banquet for Osiris. Initially, Isis did not allow her husband to attend, but Osiris saw that his brother was sincere and insisted on going. Shortly after the banquet began, Seth brought out an exquisitely crafted box, saying that whoever fit perfectly inside would receive the box as a gift. The guests at the banquet were delighted with this and all wanted to get the exquisite box, so everyone lay down to try it, but no one fit perfectly. Then it was Osiris's turn to try. He was not interested in the box, but everyone wanted to know if he would fit, so reluctantly, Osiris entered the box. Strangely, his body fit perfectly inside the box, and everyone cheered, but when he tried to come out, Seth quickly closed the lid. He nailed the box shut and sealed it with lead, and Osiris quickly suffocated inside. Then Seth ordered his attendants to carry the box away. According to Seth's instructions, they quietly threw the box into the Nile. When Isis learned of her husband's unfortunate demise, she was extremely saddened. She vowed to find her husband's body. She cut off a lock of her hair, put on mourning clothes, and began her search for her husband. She went through many places, but no one saw the box, and finally, she came to the seashore and saw a child. The child told her that he had seen the box drift into the sea from the Nile. While Isis was searching for her husband, Seth seized the throne, and once he took office, the Egyptian people suffered greatly under his oppression. As for Isis, she became a thorn in Seth's side, and he ordered that no one should receive or protect her. So Isis's situation became even more difficult. At this time, she received the miraculous help of 7 scorpions, and Ra also sent a guide named Anubis. Once, Isis came to the home of a poor woman and saved the woman's child, so she was able to stay there for the night. Shortly afterward, Isis gave birth to a son, Horus. When Seth learned of this, he tried every means to capture them, leaving them nowhere to hide. Later, Seth killed Horus, but Isis, with the help of Ra and the wisdom god Thoth, revived her beloved son from death. When Osiris's coffin drifted to the beach of Byblos in Syria, a divine tree grew from there. When the king saw that the tree grew very quickly, thick and large, he ordered it to be cut down and made into palace pillars. Because of divine inspiration, Isis went to look for her husband in Syria. The queen saw Isis as intelligent and lovely, so she made her the nursemaid of her child. Isis was very fond of the child and wanted him to live forever, so she ordered him to be refined in fire. When the queen saw this, she was very angry, and Isis had to revive the child, but he could no longer live forever. Later, Isis regained her goddess form and asked the king to give her the sacred pillar. The king granted her request. So she dug out the box from the pillar and wrapped the pillar in cloth, anointed it with myrrh. Later, the king ordered his subordinates to build a temple for Isis and placed the sacred pillar inside. For many years, the people of Byblos worshipped at the temple. When Isis was about to leave Syria, the king entrusted his son to her, so they set out together. Along the way, Isis wanted to see her dead husband again, so she opened the box and passionately kissed her cold husband. The prince of Byblos wanted to peek inside the box and was struck dead by Isis's light. When Isis hid the box in the jungle and went to fetch her son, Seth discovered the box and cut Osiris's body into 14 pieces, throwing them into the Nile. Isis went through hardships to find her husband's body pieces. Finally, she found all the pieces and built a tomb where she found each piece. Later, temples were built on these tombs, and for many years, people worshipped Osiris and Isis in these temples. The myth vividly portrays the story of one of Egypt's main gods, Osiris, and his wife, Isis. It demonstrates through the continuous struggle between the good represented by Osiris and the evil represented by Seth that good ultimately triumphs over evil, and the truth is something no one can erase. Isis's spirit of perseverance and determination to seek her husband despite difficulties reflects the tenacity and perseverance of ancient Egyptians. Egyptian mythology is one of the earliest myths in ancient times, with significant influence and wide dissemination. Ancient Babylonian, Hebrew, and Greek-Roman myths all have traces of Egyptian mythology. It is said that after Osiris was introduced to Greece, Dionysus, the Greek god, emerged. In the Roman era, Isis was widely worshipped by the Romans. She was even regarded as the ruler of the earth and the protector of women. Even today, Egyptian mythology still has great appeal and serves as essential material for later generations to understand Egyptian history, culture, religion, and social customs. Now, as we conclude our time together, may the serenity of this moment linger with you through the night. Remember, you hold the power to create your own dreams, filled with wonder and possibility. Rest deeply, knowing that tomorrow holds endless opportunities for growth and joy. Until we meet again, sleep well and embrace the beauty of your own imagination. Good night, and sweet dreams.